Hey all, welcome to this week's vid. Sorry I've been gone for so long. Life got a little complex on me. Had a batch of life, not in a bad way, just in a really complexifying way, multiplying complexities. The good front is that I am pretty much no longer single, so good for me. Um, And there's some other good news that I'm not yet free to share, but I will. And it will bring about laughter. Guarantee it. So, yeah, and sorry I meant to say I was going to be gone for a week, but so anyway, this week's video, on the advice of a fan, decided to do Aspies versus Autistics. Now, I was going to do a lot of research on this, but frankly, this is sort of how I feel it, because I asked around. I asked my therapist. I asked a few doctors. I asked a school psychologist I know. Nobody could really give me a good difference. And excuse me if I wipe myself. It went from 50 degrees to 95 something degrees around here in 2 weeks, so it's a little bit warmer. But really, I just sort of I've been trying to define it. When I meet people, they say, I've been diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome. And I'm like, you're not an Aspie. I mean, I don't tell them that. But I get this feeling like you're not an Aspie. You are an autistic. You're maybe a high-functioning autistic, but you are definitely not an Aspie. And I couldn't evaluate. I couldn't give you a reason why. And I started looking at people, and the whole notion to me of a high-functioning Aspie versus a low-functioning Aspie, it implies that there is the same range of issue that you'd have with autistics, to the point that they actually have high-functioning autism as a diagnosis. That I don't think is true. This is my feeling on it. Now remember, as I've said before, I've never taken a psychology class in my life. A lot of this is just me and pure intellect and a lot of paying attention. I think that if autism is like this for range, from really super low to really super high, but it's still autism. Asperger's is like this, but instead of being like in the middle, it's actually more over here. Sorry, this was the high side. More over here, okay? So that high functioning and low functioning Aspies are actually different. Now, function can be a little weird. Are you measuring function in society in everyday terms? If you measure function by society, then I'm low functioning because I don't have a job, because I can't stay in school. I have a hard time maintaining relationships. And yet, people talk to me, and I have to tell them I'm an Aspie. I have to prove to them I'm an Aspie. I've had people insist that I can't be an Aspie. You're too normal. You're too this. You're too that. I'm like, no, I'm really an Aspie. I have this diagnosis. A very smart person, a neuropsychiatrist, a very smart person diagnosed me. Another very smart person clued in. There's been a lot of smart people involved in my diagnosis. My old pediatrician, who was the head of adolescent medicine at the time that I was going to him, agreed. I was in my 20s when I told him. He's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And yet I have to tell them. And so am I low functioning? Am I high functioning? I think that it's basically, if you just wanted to go by sort of a generalized feel of intellectual capacity and ability to relate to the environment and other people and ability to function. Never mind society, because you could be in the wrong society. Or as a friend of mine, and I've mentioned this, a friend of mine who has a disorder that causes his legs to atrophy due to constant spasming, he's in a wheelchair 50% of the time, has a master's degree and works at the local university doing disability resource stuff, and is very functional, and is a really super cool guy, and does like hand biking and whatnot. And he looks at his legs, and he looks at me, and he goes, if one were to say that our disabilities, your mental and my physical, were roughly equally disabling, the circumstances of society make mine less than yours. I am able to function at a higher level than you are. And yet 100 years ago, you would have functioned quite well, and I would have been not a happy man. So he points out that circumstance and location, wherever you are and when you are, have a lot to play with whether or not your disability is very large or very small. So you sort of have to come up with an objective. Now, whatever you decide is your objective reality of what high functioning versus low functioning is, it's perfectly fine. Mine is just I would love to say the 5-minute conversation, the 10-minute conversation, the 15-minute, sort of these increments of time of conversation, bringing up various topics. I've mentioned I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and it was a 3-hour bus ride because of how early I had to get to the airport to take flights home. And so, yeah, imagine you live in a big city and the 3-hour bus ride. Where in that bus ride could you tell that something was wrong? Just talking to the person. And that's my metric. So what I would love to say is that, theoretically, your average Aspie could engage in a 3-hour-long bus ride and talk to somebody, and they might know something was up, something was different. But then again, the highly religious come off different. Somebody from a different culture comes off different. There's a lot of things that come off different. So they just know something ain't normal. But if you're in Portland, that's normal. So they go, whatever. An autistic wouldn't be able to hide that. Somebody would know within 5 minutes, within 10 minutes that something was up. I have a friend, and she's a high-functioning autistic. And let me tell you that in a 5-minute conversation, you absolutely know something is different about her. I know another guy who's diagnosed as being an Asperger's syndrome person. And he is lower functioning than the girl I know who's high-functioning autism. And yet he was told he was middle ground, and she was told she was middle ground. But he's lower function, and Aspies generally are not. So that's my feeling, is that Aspies, generally, if you take whatever level they are higher functioning than a high-functioning autistic. Does that mean that every high Aspie is going to be better than every high-functioning autistic? No, it does not. Does it mean that in general they will be? Yes, it does. And that's my metric. The long and the short is that an Aspie can hide, an autistic cannot. That's the long and the short of it. I was 23 when I was diagnosed, and I was diagnosed by accident. If I hadn't come across the circumstances in my life that caused that diagnosis to happen, I can guarantee you that I wouldn't know by now. I would still know something's up. I would still know that I'm different, but I'm a nerd. I have ADD. I have this emotional disorder. I have a writing disability. Obviously, that's the difference. And that's what caused me not to be diagnosed for the previous decade before, was that, oh, we've already got him covered. And I thought I was covered, and yet I wasn't. So that's my metric, the conversational length. On average, and almost always, will an Aspie, who's on, we're assuming full set of spoons, an Aspie will always be able to hide, while an autistic won't. Okay? Now here's the even better metric. They know about their diagnosis versus they don't. An Aspie still will hide. An autistic still won't. How many times have you heard about somebody being diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s? Now, how many times do you hear about this from high-functioning autistics? I've not heard one story. I'm not saying they're not out there. So don't go filling up my e-box. I know somebody, I'm sure you do. I'm getting out to thousands of people. I love that. And I'm the only one man. That's why so I mentioned, geez, talk to me. You know, give me info. Tell me stories. I love story time. I love reading. I love watching your videos. You know, share with me. But I'm telling you, I don't know a single high-functioning autistic that that was diagnosed really late in life. I turned to a friend, and he has a girlfriend, and I looked right at him, and I said, she's somewhere on the spectrum. And he went, how did you know? I said, a 5-minute conversation. He went, is it Asperger's syndrome or high-functioning autism? And I went, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But the reason why they're not able to hide is because of this series, and because of my own experiences, and because I have 5, 6 friends on the spectrum, I paid a lot of attention as to what was the difference, what made everything different, what made my neurotypical girlfriends, and I've never dated an Aspie. I tend to date neurotypicals. Normal. And the girls I might want to date who are on the spectrum, not normal. Things like that. Comparing like for like, and then saying, okay, this one's Aspie, this one's not. What's the difference? So yeah, to sum up, since we're over 10 minutes, Aspies hide, ninja-like. The condition hides. High-functioning autistics are standing in the sun. That's all I got. Sorry, this week's video I felt like is a little long, but hey, I'm back on, and I'll continue from here out to get them out once a week, sometimes a little longer. I apologize. Like I said, life got complex on me. It will stay being complex for at least a year that I know about. So, talk to you later. Have a good week, and like I said, when the news becomes mine to share, I will. Talk to you later. Bye.